Americans are about to feel the pain of the government shutdown. The Washington Post reports that while the president ordered the Pentagon to repurpose research and development funding to make payroll for members of the military.
But the longer this goes on, the deeper the cuts are going to be. And Maria, to be clear, some of these cuts are going to be painful.
We are already seeing, and we're 12 days in, we're already seeing lines of our military at food banks trying to get food for their families in their military outfits. And I think
the fact that Marjorie Taylor Greene is sounding more like an anti-Trump resistor and somehow bringing in more logic, more reasoning into this debate than she is as a MAGA foot soldier.
I actually have a lot of thoughts on the Marjorie Taylor Greene pivot.
Let's have it. Give it to us.
I think we have some sound of her. And for people who don't know what she's sounding like, I actually think we should.
Okay, yeah, let's do it. Let's play the sound. Thanks for calling it out. Go ahead.
All right. So here's the thing. Congress just went absolutely nuclear. And I mean like full meltdown mode. We're talking about impeachment articles filed against Trump again. But here's where it gets wild. Like really wild. This time, Republicans are flipping. Yeah, you heard that right. GOP members are actually turning on Trump, and the Capitol is losing its mind. So let me ask you something. When was the last time you saw Republicans break ranks like this? I'll wait. Because honestly, this doesn't happen. The GOP has been locked in step with Trump for years, right? Through everything. Every scandal, every controversy, every tweet that made your grandma clutch her pearls. They stuck with him. But now we're seeing cracks. Big ones. And those cracks are turning into full-blown fractures that nobody saw coming just a few months ago. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
yes, to your point about the prices and tariffs, like you can go to the grocery store and you know that the olive oil costs more today than it did 3 months ago, than it did a year ago. And so people feel that. And it's up to Democrats to tell that story, but they can't tell it in moderation because we're running out of time.
And there's one thing I just have to add, because I feel like it's missing from the conversation, is the federal purges are impacting black people the hardest. Yes. 7.5% unemployment. 18% of the federal workforce was black people before he took office.
Here's what went down. October 28th, just yesterday, articles of impeachment hit Congress. 7 charges. We're talking obstruction of justice, corruption, abuse of power, the whole menu. And normally the Republicans would circle the wagons, defend their guy, call it a witch hunt. You know the drill. But this time is different. This time, whispers are coming out of closed-door meetings. Whispers about defectors, about Republicans who are done, who are ready to vote yes on impeachment. Can you believe this? Like, actually sit with that for a second. The party that has defended Trump through 2 previous impeachments, through January 6th, through classified documents, through everything, that party is starting to crack. And it's not just 1 or 2 fringe members we're talking about. Multiple GOP House members are reportedly considering jumping ship. Multiple. And that's a really big deal when you think about what it means for Trump's ability to hold power. Now, you might be wondering, okay, what changed? What finally pushed him over the edge? Well, here's the beautiful irony. Trump asked for taxpayer money to cover his legal bills. $230 million. Yeah, you heard that right. $250 million. He wants you and me to pay for his lawyers. And apparently that was the last straw for some Republicans, because their constituents are pissed, like really pissed. And these Congress members, they're looking at the 2026 midterms and they're doing the math, and the math isn't looking good. So we've got this perfect storm brewing. You've got impeachment articles on the table. You've got Republicans who are suddenly discovering they have spines. You've got a government shutdown dragging into week 3. Week 3, people. Federal workers aren't getting paid. The public is furious. And in the middle of all this chaos, Trump is asking for $250 million in legal fees. The optics are like spectacularly bad. I mean, you couldn't design worse optics if you tried. And here's the thing that nobody's really talking about yet. This isn't just about Trump anymore. This is about the future of the Republican Party. Because if even a handful of GOP members vote for impeachment, that changes everything. That's a crack in the foundation. That's Republicans admitting, yeah, maybe we went too far. Maybe defending this guy isn't worth losing our seats over. Maybe our political survival matters more than loyalty to Trump. The tension inside the Capitol right now, it's apparently at historic levels. We're talking behind the scenes negotiations, secret meetings, members trying to figure out which way the wind is blowing. Some political commentators are calling this the most consequential power battle in modern U.S. history. And honestly, they might not be wrong. Because what happens in the next few weeks could literally reshape American politics for a generation. Think about that. A generation of political realignment happening right now in real time while we're all watching. Think about it. If Republicans start defecting, if impeachment actually gets traction this time, what does that mean? It means the Trump era might actually be ending. Not with a bang, but with his own party finally saying enough. It means the 2026 midterms could be a bloodbath for whoever ends up on the wrong side of this fight. It means every political calculation, every alliance, every assumption we've had about how the parties work, all of that gets thrown out the window. And look, I know we've been here before. I know impeachment feels like this thing that happens and then nothing changes, but this time feels different. The energy is different. The numbers are different. The political calculus is different. Because for the first time, Republicans aren't just privately grumbling. They're actually considering going public. They're actually thinking about voting yes. And that's huge. That's unprecedented in the Trump era of politics. The stakes couldn't be higher. We're talking about the presidency, about control of Congress in the next election, about the direction of the Republican Party for the next decade, about whether American democracy can actually hold leaders accountable, or whether party loyalty always wins. These are the biggest questions in politics, and they're all coming to a head right now, in real time, while we watch. So buckle up, because what we're about to witness could be the biggest political earthquake since Trump got elected in the first place. The question isn't whether this is serious. The question is how far it goes, how many Republicans flip, how much the party fractures, and whether Trump can survive his own party turning against him, whether he can weather this storm, or whether this is finally the controversy that brings him down. Let's get into it and break down what's really happening behind the scenes in Washington. Okay, so let's talk about what's actually in these impeachment articles, because the details matter here. We're not talking about some vague accusations or political theater. We're talking 7 specific charges: obstruction of justice, corruption, abuse of power. These are the heavy hitters. These are the charges that actually have teeth. Now here's where most people get confused. They hear impeachment and they think, oh great, here we go again. Nothing's gonna happen. And look, I get it. We've seen this movie before. Twice, actually. Trump got impeached over Ukraine. Trump got impeached over January 6th. Both times, Republicans voted to acquit. Both times, nothing changed. So why should this time be any different? Well, here's the thing that's changed. The political landscape. See, back in 2019, 2021, Trump was still the undisputed king of the Republican Party. Crossing him meant political suicide. It meant losing your primary. It meant getting primary by some Trump loyalist who beat you. So Republicans stuck together. They had to. Their political survival depended on it. But now we're in 2025, Trump's second term, and things are different. The shine has worn off. The magic isn't working like it used to. And most importantly, Republicans are looking at their polling numbers and they're sweating. Because Trump's approval rating isn't what it was. The public is tired, fatigued, done with the constant drama. And these Congress members, they're thinking about their own seats, their own careers, their own political futures. And then Trump goes and asks for $230 million in taxpayer money for his legal fees. Like, come on, read the room, man. You've got federal workers going without paychecks because of the government shutdown. You've got Americans struggling with inflation, with bills, with everyday life, and you're asking them to foot the bill for your personal legal problems. The audacity is actually impressive in a terrible way. I mean, the timing couldn't be worse if he planned it specifically to alienate every moderate Republican in Congress. So now you've got these Republican House members in an impossible position. They can stick with Trump and face angry voters back home, or they can break ranks, vote for impeachment, and maybe, just maybe, save their political careers. It's not about principles. It's not about justice. It's about survival, pure political survival. And that's what makes this moment so dangerous for Trump. Because when politicians start making calculations based on self-interest instead of loyalty, that's when alliances crumble. Let's talk about who these potential defectors might be. Now, nobody's going fully on record yet. This is all happening behind closed doors, right? Closed door meetings, whispered conversations, feeling out where people stand. But according to reports, we're talking about moderate Republicans from purple districts, the ones who won by narrow margins, the ones who know they're vulnerable in 2026. These aren't the MAGA diehards. These are the members who've been quietly uncomfortable with Trump for years, but went along because they had to. They held their noses and voted with the party because the alternative was losing everything they worked for. And here's what's making this moment the perfect storm for defection. You've got multiple crises happening simultaneously. The government shutdown is now in week 3. Federal employees are missing paychecks. National parks are closed. Government services are grinding to a halt. And the public blames Republicans. The polling shows it. People are mad at the GOP for this shutdown. And that anger is real. It's showing up in town halls, in constituent calls, in angry emails flooding congressional offices. Then you layer on the impeachment articles, 7 serious charges that are hard to just dismiss as partisan nonsense. These aren't flimsy accusations. These are detailed, specific allegations with evidence behind them. Obstruction of justice. There's a paper trail. Corruption charges. There are receipts. Abuse of power. There are witnesses. This isn't just political theater. There's actual substance here. And that makes it so much harder for Republicans to defend Trump without looking like they're ignoring obvious wrongdoing. The evidence is piling up, and it's getting harder to explain away. And then, like the cherry on top of this disaster Sunday, Trump asked for taxpayer money for his legal bills. $250 million for a guy who claims to be a billionaire, who ran on being so rich he couldn't be bought, who told everyone he'd self-fund because he didn't need anyone's money. That guy is now asking regular Americans to pay his legal fees. The hypocrisy is so thick you could cut it with a knife. So what are Republicans supposed to do? Their base is fracturing. Some Trump supporters are even getting tired of the constant chaos. Moderate Republicans never really liked Trump anyway. Independent voters are fleeing, and the 2026 midterms are coming fast. Every Republican in a competitive district is looking at these numbers and thinking, how do I survive this? What's my path to re-election if I keep defending Trump through all of this? And for many of them, the answer is starting to look like there isn't one. Not if they stay loyal. This is where the defector math gets interesting. House Republicans only have a narrow majority. A really narrow majority. If even 5 or 6 members flip and vote for impeachment, suddenly this thing becomes real. Suddenly you've got bipartisan support for impeachment. Suddenly this thing becomes real. Suddenly you've got bipartisan support for impeachment. And once you've got bipartisan support, the pressure intensifies. More Republicans start thinking, well, if they're voting yes, maybe I should too. Maybe it's safer to be part of the group that voted to impeach than the group that stuck with Trump and lost their seats. It's like watching dominoes line up. The first few are the hardest to tip, but once they start falling, the momentum builds. And right now we're watching those first dominoes wobble. We're seeing Republicans test the waters, floating trial balloons, seeing how their constituents react to criticism of Trump, gauging whether it's safe to break ranks yet. Every statement gets carefully worded. Every interview answer gets tested with focus groups. They're all trying to figure out the safest path forward. Behind the scenes, the negotiations are intense. We're talking horse trading, deal making, Republicans trying to figure out what they get if they vote yes, protection from Trump's attacks, support in their primaries, leadership positions. Everyone's trying to figure out their angle. Everyone's trying to protect themselves. And the Trump team knows this is dangerous. They're in full damage control mode, making calls, applying pressure, threatening primaries, calling members personally. The White House is working overtime to keep the caucus together because they know if this dam breaks, if Republicans start defecting, the whole thing could collapse fast. But here's the problem Trump faces. He's not as powerful as he used to be. The threats don't land the same way. The pressure doesn't work like it did because these Republicans are doing their own math, and their math says that sticking with Trump might be more dangerous than breaking from him. That's the calculation that changes everything. When fear of Trump becomes less powerful than fear of losing re-election, the whole dynamic shifts. We're also seeing this play out in the media. Conservative outlets are split. Some are defending Trump, like always, but others are starting to hedge, starting to ask questions, starting to suggest maybe, just maybe, the party needs to think about its future. That's significant because when the conservative media ecosystem starts showing cracks, that gives Republicans cover to break ranks. They can point to Fox News hosts or conservative writers who are questioning Trump and say, see, it's not just me. The tension in the Capitol is apparently off the charts. Members avoiding each other in hallways, meetings getting heated, accusations flying, everyone trying to figure out who they can trust, who's really with Trump and who's just pretending, who's going to flip and who's going to hold firm. It's like watching a slow motion political explosion and nobody knows exactly when it's going to detonate. The pressure is building every single day and eventually something's going to give. And you know what makes this even crazier? The timing. We're heading into the holiday season. Thanksgiving is around the corner. Christmas after that. Normally Congress would be thinking about winding down, heading home, spending time with family. But instead, they're dealing with a government shutdown, impeachment articles, and a potential party civil war. Can you imagine those Thanksgiving dinners? Republican members going home to their districts, sitting down with constituents who are either furious they're not defending Trump enough or furious they're defending him at all. There's no winning move here. The whole situation is a mess, a complete and total mess, and it's only going to get messier before it gets better, because we're still in the early stages. The impeachment inquiry hasn't even really started yet. The hearings haven't happened. The witness testimony hasn't been heard. The evidence hasn't been fully presented. All of that is still coming. And every step of the way, Republicans are going to face more pressure, more tough votes, more impossible choices that could end their political careers. All right, let's break this down into what actually matters, because there's a lot of noise here, and we need to cut through it and figure out what's real, what's political theater, and what's genuinely threatening to Trump's presidency. Point 1. These impeachment articles are serious. 7 charges: obstruction, corruption, abuse of power. This isn't some made-up political stunt. There's actual substance behind these accusations. Evidence, documents, testimony. The kind of stuff that makes it hard for Republicans to just wave it away and call it fake news. And that matters because it gives potential defectors cover. They can say, look, I'm not voting for impeachment because I hate Trump. I'm voting for it because the evidence is overwhelming. That's a much easier sell to voters than just admitting you're abandoning the party leader. The obstruction charges, those are particularly problematic because obstruction is clear cut. Either you interfered with an investigation or you didn't. Either you withheld documents or you didn't. Either you told witnesses not to cooperate or you didn't. There's not a lot of gray area there. And if the evidence shows Trump did those things, well, that's a pretty straightforward, impeachable offense. Even Republicans who want to defend him are going to have a hard time arguing that obstruction of justice is okay. The corruption charges are similarly damaging because Americans hate corruption. Left, right, center, doesn't matter. Everybody hates the idea of politicians using their office for personal gain, using their power to enrich themselves or their families, taking bribes, making shady deals. That stuff plays terribly with voters. So if there's solid evidence of corruption, Republicans defending Trump are going to have to explain to their constituents why corruption is acceptable. Good luck with that. Point 2. The political dynamics have shifted, and this is crucial. Back in Trump's first term, crossing him was suicide, instant career death. But now the calculation is different, because sticking with Trump might be the bigger risk, especially for members in purple districts, especially with the 2026 midterms looming. These Republicans are looking at polling, showing voters are tired of Trump drama, tired of the chaos, tired of government shutdowns and constant crises. And they're thinking, maybe my best shot at keeping my seat is to distance myself from this mess. The $230 million legal fee request, that's what we call a political gift, because it's such an obvious, easy thing for Republicans to oppose. They can say, look, I supported Trump on policy. I voted with him on taxes, on judges, on whatever. But asking taxpayers to pay his personal legal bills, that crosses a line. That's indefensible. And their constituents will eat that up. It gives them a specific, concrete reason to break from Trump that isn't about complicated policy or ideology. It's just basic fairness, basic common sense. Think about how that conversation goes. A Republican member goes to a town hall. A constituent stands up and says, why should I pay Trump's legal bills when I can barely afford my own bills? What's the answer to that? There isn't one. There's no good response. You can't defend it. You can't spin it. You just have to eat it and hope people forget. Or you can oppose it and look like you're standing up for regular people. Which one do you think these politicians are going to choose? The answer is pretty obvious when their careers are on the line. Point 3, the government shutdown is making everything worse because it's not happening in a vacuum. Federal workers are missing paychecks, services are stopped, and people are mad, really mad, and they're blaming Republicans. So you've got these GOP members already dealing with angry constituents over the shutdown, already watching their approval ratings drop, already worried about their re-election chances. And now you're asking them to also defend Trump on impeachment, to also explain away the legal fee request, to also keep carrying water for a president who's dragging them down. That's a lot to ask. The shutdown creates this pressure cooker environment where everything feels more urgent, more desperate, where Republicans are more willing to take dramatic action because they're already in crisis mode. It's like, what do we have to lose at this point? We're already losing. Might as well try something different. And for some members, that something different is voting for impeachment, federal employees going 3 weeks without pay. That's real hardship. Those are real families struggling to make rent, to buy groceries, to pay for medicine. And every single one of those families knows someone, has friends, has relatives, has co-workers, and they're all talking. They're all spreading the word about how bad things are, how frustrated they are, how angry they are at the politicians who let this happen. That anger spreads, it builds, and eventually it shows up at the ballot box. Point 4, this is about the future of the Republican Party. Not just Trump, not just this impeachment, but the whole direction of the party going forward. Because if Republicans vote to impeach their own president, that's a statement. That's the party saying, okay, the Trump experiment went too far. Time to course correct. Time to rebuild. Time to figure out what the GOP looks like in a post-Trump world. And there are a lot of Republicans who want that, who've wanted that for years, but couldn't say it out loud. This impeachment gives them the chance. Think about the midterms. 2026 is less than 2 years away. Every House member is thinking about that election. Every senator up for re-election is doing the math. And the math says that being too closely tied to Trump could be toxic, could cost them their seats, could hand control of Congress back to Democrats. So voting for impeachment becomes a way to create distance, a way to tell voters, hey, I'm independent. I'm not just a Trump loyalist. I can make tough decisions when necessary. That's valuable political positioning. The Republican Party is at a crossroads. One path is staying fully committed to Trump, defending him no matter what, and hoping that works out. The other path is starting to move beyond Trump, finding new leaders, rebuilding the party's image, and more Republicans are starting to think that second path might be the smarter play, especially younger members, especially members who want long careers in politics and know that Trump won't be around forever. Now, let's talk about what comes next, because this story isn't over, it's just beginning. The impeachment articles have been filed. Now comes the committee process, the hearings, the witness testimony, the evidence presentation. All of that happens over the next few weeks. And during that time, Republicans are going to be under intense pressure from Trump, from their constituents, from the media, from everyone. They're going to have to decide where they stand. And those decisions will shape everything that comes after. If even a handful of Republicans vote yes on impeachment in committee, that's huge. That means it goes to the full House for a vote. And if it gets to the full House, anything can happen. The pressure intensifies. More Republicans start wobbling. The media coverage becomes overwhelming. And suddenly, you've got a real possibility of Trump becoming the first president to be impeached with bipartisan support in the House. That would be historic. That would be a political earthquake that reshapes everything. And here's the scary part for Trump. If the House impeaches him with Republican votes, the Senate trial becomes much more serious. Mitch McConnell and Senate Republicans can't just dismiss it as partisan nonsense. If House Republicans voted for it, they have to actually engage, actually hold the real trial, actually weigh the evidence. And once you're in that territory, once you've got Republican senators feeling like they have permission to turn on Trump, anything becomes possible. The Senate is different from the House. Senators serve 6-year terms, not 2. They're not as immediately worried about the next election. They have more independence, more ability to buck the party if they think it's the right call. And there are definitely Senate Republicans who've been waiting for an excuse to turn on Trump, who've been biting their tongues for years, voting with him, but hating it. This could be their moment. The economic fallout matters too. This government shutdown is real. It's hurting real people. Federal employees with bills to pay, contractors losing income, services grinding to a halt. And the longer it goes, the worse it gets. The angrier people become. And all that anger gets channeled into the political process, into town halls, into phone calls to congressional offices, into voting decisions. In 2026, Republicans are feeling that heat. They're hearing from constituents who are done with the dysfunction, done with the drama, just done. So where does this leave us? We're watching the Republican Party potentially fracture in real time. We're watching the Trump coalition show its first real cracks. We're watching political calculations shift from loyalty to survival. And we're watching what could be the beginning of the end of the Trump era in American politics. This is one of those moments where everything hangs in the balance, where the decisions made in the next few weeks could determine the direction of American politics for years, where we're watching history happen in real time, even if we don't fully understand it yet. The question isn't whether this is important. The question is how far it goes, how many Republicans actually flip, how much the party fractures, and whether Trump can survive his own party deciding he's become too much of a liability. Look, Trump has survived so much, so many scandals, so many controversies, so many moments where people said, this is it. This is the thing that brings him down. And every time, he's weathered the storm. He's come out the other side. He's proven everyone wrong. But this time might actually be different. Because this time, the threat isn't coming from Democrats. It's coming from his own party. From the people who are supposed to have his back. One thing's for sure. The next few weeks are going to be absolutely wild. We're going to see Republicans forced to make the toughest political decisions of their careers. We're going to see alliances tested, loyalties questioned, power plays made, and through it all, Trump is going to be fighting for his political survival like never before. Buckle up, because this ride is just getting started.